All right. Think we are on now. All right. Khan. Okay. All praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Mashiach Yahweh Shai. All right. Yahweh be in the name of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Shai, in the name of his only begotten Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. Kom Yasha'Allah, Shar Kadash Yarak. Happy New Moon, 12th month. Okay. Little issue, but uh that's small compared to the fact that following the law, statutes, commandments of the Most High God. Okay. Um, okay, so first let's start with prayers. Okay. And this beautiful new moon, this new month, another month to start anew, to get closer to the Most High, do his will, follow his law, statutes, commandments, teach others to do so. It's another month to do so. So this class, we're going to talk about the children. Okay. Save the children. All right. So first, let's pray. All right. This is the Lord's Prayer in Paleo Hebrew, Abanawa, Shabbat Shemayim, Kodash, Aya, Shemka, Yahweh, Malachbaka, Thaba'a, Ratazayaka, Aya, Aisha, Barataza, Kawa, Aya, Bashamayim, Nadananawa, Lacham, Kau, Yawam, Wasalachnawa, Kabawachnawa, Kasalachnawa, Kabawafinawa, Wala'a, Dabinawa, Banasai 1, Abal, Hawashainawa, Mayan, Rai, Kaya, Laka, Hamalakwa, Wa'ala, Watapalaraf, Labulonium, Aman. Shemai, Yashirala, Yahweh, Allah Hainawa, Yahweh, Shemai, Yashirala, Yahweh, Allah Hainawa, Yahweh, Shemai, Yashirala, Yahweh, Allah Hainawa, Yahweh, Shemai, Yashirallah, Yahweh, Allah, Hainawa, Yahweh, Hear, O Israel, Yahweh, our power is one. Deuteronomy 6, verse 4, Creole of Israel, Hallelujah, 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 Kom Yashal. All right. Blessing of the new moon. Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shah, Babakashah, Barak, Nawa, Kodash, Yarak, Wa, Nawa, Rum, Yawam, Wa, Nawa, Kad, Sho, Kodash, Yarak, Ba'ashem, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shah, the water, Allah, Aulam, Amen. Khan. All right. So let's first start with the book of Psalm, chapter 27 and verse 3. All right. Now, one thing that we're seeing right now is how Esau is being exposed to the way he treats children. You know what I mean? Esau, with the whole e-files, the fact that pretty much the social media and the tech giants are in these files. Of course, they're suppressing the information, so messing up the algorithm if you ever bring up that they're in there. So we'll call them the e-files. I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. Um, the things that they do to children, you know what I mean? And this is ritualistic. Uh, and it's been going on a long time. You know what I'm saying? It's nothing new, you know. Um, that guy, that Amalekite, that is the name on the files. He's just the latest in a long line of heathens that treat children any type of way, do the opposite of what the Most High says, and do the most sadistic things you can imagine. You know what I mean? But how are we supposed to treat our children? How are we supposed to you know, raise them up in the Lord? We got a responsibility as parents. If you're not a parent, if you have, nephews, nieces, children in your neighborhood, on your block that, are receptive to you because you being an Israelite, they could feel your spirit. They could feel, that the Lord is with you. If you follow the law, statutes, commandments, you probably notice that animals come and hang out with you, and cats just come up to you, for no reason. Different squirrels, and it's just it's just natural. You know what I mean? So children naturally gravitate to people they feel comfortable with. So if you don't have children, you can still be a major influence in their life. You know what I mean? By the way you live your life, example is set. Okay. But let's go to Psalm chapter 27, Slakia 127 and 3. This is the book of Psalm, chapter 127 and verse 3. Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. So, this is a blessing from the Most High. You know what I'm saying? Um, to keep everything going. Of course, when Adam and Eve, were around, we go back to Genesis, the Lord commanded them to what? Be fruitful and multiply. You know what I mean? That's important to keep this thing going, keep the heritage of the Lord going, and you are blessed with children to do so. You know, um, they're not accidents. You know what I'm saying? Not a mistake. Oh, she's pregnant. You know what I mean? This is things that you know, the Lord ordained. Do you know what I'm saying? And what does Esau say? Esau say, here, we'll put clinics in your neighborhoods to get rid of it. You can't afford that child. So, that's the first thing they do. You know what I mean? Racist Edomites will go into these clinics and pay it forward. You know what I'm saying? Here's $500, here's $1,000, here's $10,000 to anybody that comes in here and can't afford the procedure. You know what I mean? We'll help them out. And that's them doing their part for their nation because they are wicked and they don't want us here. You know what I'm saying? So that does happen. And when you go into these clinics, if a woman, whether she be a certain age, teenager, whatever, go in there, they're like, okay, here's your options. We could do it this way, which will just get all the problems wiped away. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry about anything. And the unfortunate part about that is, you know, that's like the serpent beguiling Eve. You know what I mean? Thinking about what you don't have, what you can't afford. You know what I'm saying? But for the most part, most people in America don't have $1,000 in savings. So everybody for the most part, is in a bind as far as finances goes. But we're all here. You know what I'm saying? We're all still alive. You know what I mean? All our parents struggled to have us here, but we made it. You know what I mean? But that's the serpent, and that's what they do. You can see that on the movie Nefarious, talking about, a sacrifice. The sacrifice now is on that table in that clinic. Okay. So they're not a burden, and it's a responsibility from the Most High to have these children, what I mean, and raise them right in the law, statutes, commandments. Okay. Society has a lot to say about children. You know what I mean? Oh, they're all bad, and oh, you know how these young bulls are, and they group everybody together. But you got to keep in mind, it's not everybody, and think about the baby boomers. If anybody's uh, destroying the country, you know what I'm saying? Of course, we know the Most High is destroying the country, Babylon, but Trump and Elon Musk and what's his name? Lindsey Graham, all these baby boomers, Nancy Pelosi, they're all in their 80s and 90s and won't leave. They won't leave office. They won't pass the reins down to the future. They're content in blowing up the entire world to get what they want. You know what I'm saying? So for people that blame children on the problems in society, it's it's just a gross miscalculation. You know what I mean? When you work in a school, you notice that it's a they're children that, are wilding out. Let's not think that's not the case, but it's not everybody. You might be in a school with 1,000 people, and it really be a handful of the students that are causing the most trouble. You know what I mean? Getting suspended the most, and getting in fights and disrespecting teachers, so forth and so on. And then when you go back into their background, what happened to them, it's trauma, and their trauma usually comes from an adult. Okay, but the Bible says um, children are a blessing. Let's get that. Let's go to Genesis 33 and 5. You know, and who makes the narrative? The same people that are in these e-files. They're the ones that run the media and all these different outlets to paint a negative picture on our children. So Genesis 33, verse 5. So keep in mind, this is when Jacob um, sees Esau, okay? After Esau says, I'm gonna kill you. Um, verse 5, and he lifted up his eyes. Matter of fact, I'll start at verse 4. And Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Verse 5, and he lifted up his eyes and saw the woman and the children and said, who are those with thee? And he said, the children which Yahweh have graciously given thy servant. This is a gift. Their children are a gift from God. You know what I mean? So when you get in this situation, Esau and Jacob are embracing, at this point, of course, we go to Amos 1:11. Uh, Esau struck out, for three transgression of four, Esau struck out. Now it's to the point where Esau traffics children to islands. You know what I'm saying? Doing the most evil, wicked, diabolical things you can think of. All right. But the Most High says they're a blessing. So when we understand people saying, oh man, they can still make it. How, Sway? Do you know what I mean? Like what what am I missing that you see? You see something positive out of these people right now, or do you see that exposure that's taking place? I see exposure. Let's get that in Jeremiah. Jeremiah 49, and I believe it's verse 10. Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 10. I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places. He shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren, and his neighbors, and he is not. So he's exposed right now. He sacrifices children. You know what I mean? We actually have a government, and it's not just in America. This is, if you've been paying attention, this has been taking place, and a lot of other places are actually doing things. America is just letting it happen and pretend like it's not going on. Trump says it's a Democratic hoax. You know what I mean? But other places are firing these people and possibly, going to charge them. We'll see. But they're taking children and they're cannibals. They're literally cannibals. You know what I'm saying? You can read that throughout the e-files. People are trafficking them for purposes that go all across the board, all types of manner of wickedness. So they're being exposed at an unbelievable rate, and that leaves a huge gap for um, someone to come in, some people, group of people to take the kingdom, take power. And the next kingdom is going to be an everlasting kingdom, and it's going to be run by Yahushai in righteousness. Okay, because obviously Esau is doing a terrible job. Okay, let's go to Psalm chapter 128. And he has the nerve to call everybody else a DEI, oh, it's a DEI hire, DEI hire. But of course, they get all their jobs, how? Through, oh, it's my cousin. Oh, this is my nephew right here. He just came out of jail from doing 10 years. We're going to have him in charge. He's going to be a supervisor. He's got 50 people under him. You know what I mean? That's a DEI hire. He had no type of skills. Um, resume is blank as I don't know what, but that's how they all get their jobs. And that's one reason why, the system's so messed up. You know, look at them as look at their family structure. Check them out when they go to, out in public, the way their children act. You know what I mean? They're all over the place, kicking and screaming and throwing stuff. I want this, I want that, and shut up, B, cursing out their parents. And then they had the nerve to say that we're bad parents. But you're looking at them like, oh, couldn't be me. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna be my child. You know what I'm saying? And the children grow up to be adults and they run the institutions, and you see how terrible they're being done, how things are working out for it. Okay. Let's go to Psalm 128 and verse 3. All right, Psalm 128 and verse 3. Thy wife shall be as a fruitful vine by the sides of thine house. Thy children like olive plants round about thy table. Okay, verse 4. Behold, that thus shall the man be blessed that feareth the Lord. So children are a blessing. Having children are a blessing. Our ancestors, you might be your grandparents, great grandparents, 13, 15 brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? They knew naturally we had to have a bunch of children. We're in such a dire straits. It's revolutionary to have children. You know what I mean? And Esau knows that because the Most High is taking his woman's womb and making it barren. That's why every other day you see Elon Musk get on Twitter and say, have children, and he's putting up statistics of why Europe is behind the eight ball. You know what I mean? Their mortality rate far exceeds their birth rate. And same thing in America. Esau's not having children, and the only person that can do something like that would be the Most High God. If I could do it, I'd do it in a heartbeat too. But I don't have that power. You know what I'm saying? So the only people that can actually do that and decimate this evil, wicked group of people is the Lord, you know? And they want to take it out on us, but hey, you got to take that up with the Most High God, okay? And children belong to God. All right, let's get Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 20. The children represent future generations of righteousness. That's why you're always supposed to tell your children um, who the Lord is, what we should be doing, how we should be moving, you know. Um, of course, he wants to continue on with the covenant he's given to our forefathers, to our children. All right. So we don't want to mess up. We don't want to not tell your children that they can eat pork, that pork is a terrible thing. You know what I mean? You don't want to leave that out, you know. So the minute they're old enough to understand, raise them in the right way. Raise them in the law, statutes, commandments, following the Sabbath, wearing your fringes, and not just wearing them, but wearing them to keep in mind that you have to keep the commandments, treating their brother and their sisters like they want to be treated. These are all important things, not eating bottom feeders. These are all important things. Following the feast days and not following after, all these other holidays, so-called holidays in their school. It seems like every year I gotta tell my, you know, of course I have to tell the teacher like, oh, children don't do these certain holidays. And then they come home with paper, a Christmas tree and everything. I gotta get with them. Like, look, I don't know if you remember what I said when we first got here. You know what I mean? You gotta come at these teachers because they want to implant this American way of life to your children. And look at the American way of life. It's full of gross, disgusting, wicked, evil people who, of course, society will say is, oh, they're high value men. Oh, wow, look at that. He hops out of a private jet. He has $50 billion cash. He owns all these different retail stores. He is the head of Victoria's Secret, right? All these things, you know what I mean? And come to find out, this is what they do on their weekend, on their spare time, eating beef jerky. That's a whole nother topic. Put it like this: that beef jerky and nothing to do with no beef. It's jerky, but ain't got nothing to do with no beef. They're cannibals. This is what they do on their yachts. They have $100 million yachts where they're just doing the most evil, wicked, scraping women and men, eating babies. These are high value men, allegedly, right? So, what it ultimately comes down to is following the law, statutes, commandments. They're going to get you and your family in the place you want to be and away from these sick, demented people. Okay. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 16. Ezekiel 16 and verse 20. Moreover, thou hast taken thy sons and thy daughters, whom thou hast borne unto me, and these hast thou sacrificed unto them to be devoured. Is this of thy whoredoms a small matter? It's not a small matter, right? It's a question. It's a small matter. Thou hast slain my children and delivered them to cause them to pass through the fire for them. Okay. And this is what, you know, as far as our ancestors going off, you know, because we're the children of God. And, now as we, build up who we are, what we should be doing, where we should be going, reading the scriptures, coming back to who we truly are. Esau's doubling down on these type of things. Okay. Let's go to Exodus chapter 13, because the children are the Lord's. We're the parents are stewards. We are raising the children. We should be raising them in the law, statutes, commandments, to turn this whole thing around. We're like, oh, that's my child. Oh, that's God's child. Okay. Exodus chapter 13, let's get that in verse 2. Sanctify unto me all the firstborn, whatsoever openeth the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and of beast, it is mine. Okay. So man and beast belong to Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Okay. What we really want to talk about is the man, the women, the children belong to the Most High God. Okay. And recently, we come to find out through the e-files of these sacrifices. Iran right now, they're really mad at Iran. Iran set up like an idol of Baal and then lit it on fire. That hurt people's feelings. That hurt Lindsey Graham's feelings. That hurt Donald Trump's feelings. These evil people that worship these deities that get their power from these deities, these demons, right? On the left hand side, they felt that, and now they really want to go to war with Iran. You know, at first they were talking, now they're like, let's get it. There's another aircraft carrier on their way to the Middle East as we speak. Okay, let's get Jeremiah 32 and 35. One thing is difficult for people to acknowledge. Not probably not anybody watching this. You know what I mean? You get it, but um there's people that, we probably tried to wake up in the past. You talk to, might be close friends, family members, and you tell them, man, this is an evil, wicked society. These people, the things they do to children, they worship demons. They're all about the devil and Satanism. They're like, I don't get it. Why are you saying this? This doesn't make any sense. They're successful. They're making moves on this earth. You probably want to be like them. That's why you don't like them, and will take a personal shot at you. And now it's just the dissonance, the cognitive dissonance that's setting in that they don't know what to believe. They see it, they know it's being talked about on a daily basis. There's reporters asking the president of the United States almost every day, what about this? What about that in the files? What about this? Pam Bondi being grilled on the Hill, about redacting the perpetrators' names and not the victims. And the same people that are waiting in line to vote are feeling terrible, or they don't know how to feel. They're messed up right now, you know, that all these things that you've been telling them, which brothers on the street corner has been telling them, for years, is coming to pass. All right, let's go to Jeremiah 32 and what I say, 35, right? And they built a high place of Baal, which are in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to cause their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire of Moloch, unto Moloch, which I commanded them not. Neither came it into my mind that they should do this abomination to cause Judah to sin. So these deities are real. They've been real. This is Jeremiah. This is before Christ was walking on the earth. Um, well, technically, being born, Mary and Joseph. Um, I guess not technically, you know what I mean. Before BC, before Christ, this is Jeremiah talking about these things, and it goes further. It goes back to the days of Moses and what not to do. What not to do to your children. You know what I'm saying? But apparently, um, Esau does the exact opposite. Okay, so what do we have to do? We have to play our role, right? As parents on this planet, we have to play our role. Okay. And we are stewards. We have to talk to our children because if we don't, America will. If we don't lead our daughters into righteousness, America will lead them into whoredom, Nicki Minaj, Megan Thee Stallion, Cardi B, you know what I mean? All the people that are popular and have all the money and fame, America would say that's the way to go. If you don't raise your sons up to be men and warriors for Yahweh Shem Yahushai, they'll raise them up to be Billy Porters and homosexuals. Or hyper aggressive, drug dealing, thugs, stereotypes. That's what you're gonna be. You're going to be in jail at a certain age. Don't even try to do anything with your life. That's what America's gonna raise your child if you don't step in and do the right thing. Okay. So let's get Deuteronomy 6 and 6. What does do the right thing mean? Do the right thing was a movie by Spike Lee. What does I don't get it. Do the right thing, what does that mean? Well, the scriptures talk about it. Scriptures let you know what it means to do the right thing. So Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 6, and these words which I command thee this day shall be in thy heart, and thou shalt teach Slack. Let me start at verse 5. Matter of fact, start at verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thy heart. And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thy house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. And thou shalt bind them for a sign unto thy hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thy eyes. Thou shalt write them upon thy posts of thy house and under thy gates. So, at all aspects of time, from the morning to the night, when you're laying down, when you're waking up, when you're walking outside the house, when you're inside the house, you be talking about Yahweh Shemel Shai. You should be bringing it up to your child. Um, Baconaire commercial comes on. They're like, so should we be eating pork? Child should be like, no, we shouldn't be pork. Where can I find that in the scriptures? Talk about it. What's going to happen to people that do that? Let's go in Isaiah 66. Talk about it. You know what I mean? So in every aspect, you should be bringing up the laws, statutes, commandments written in the scriptures, talking about the Most High God, talking about um, the different dark sayings and the parables that Yahweh Shai was talking about when he was on the earth, the wisdom of Solomon, and the wise sayings, Ecclesiasticus and wisdom of Solomon. You know what I mean? Words to live by, Psalms, all that. All that should be something that, you should be talking to your children about on a daily basis. You know what I mean? If you don't have children, you got nieces, nephews, like I said, neighbors, you know, is something as easy as a mention. It's something that they will remember. You know what I mean? It's like, what were you talking about with not eating pork? And then show them in the Bible. Well, God says we shouldn't do that. You know what I mean? And that's something that will reverberate in their mind. Even though they're not, your biological children, that's something that they'll. I remember somebody that, my neighbor or my aunt or my uncle, they they talked about the Bible a lot. Let me look into that. And that it could change that child's life. Whether their parents are doing it or not, you planted the seed. Okay. So you should talk to them at home, when walking, when lying down, when rising up. Every opportunity, take every opportunity to put these very important things in your child's mind, because if you don't, somebody else will, and it won't be something you will like. Raising children is a daily teaching. I mean, it's not occasional. Every now and then we'll talk about it, this and that. There, no, this is a daily thing. Okay. Fathers have a major role. Let's go to Ephesians. That's one thing that Esau planned to do, to get the father out the house. He used Eve as well, uplift Eve, and bring down the family structure. I don't need a man. I'm an independent woman. Why don't Asians say that? Why don't East Indians say that? Um, the Edomites, women said that, but that still didn't get them where they needed to be. You know what I mean? They came to us. I think it was Gloria Steinfeld, something, some Amalekite last name. But you can look her up. Um, she led the feminist movement, and she was a CIA agent, and her target was the black community. She was in feminist, but she brought the black women in. Come on, your men are oppressing you, which was not true. We were all being oppressed by the Edomites, but that will break down the family structure. And if, there's benefits to be made, the benefits to be had out of the government, which of course you saw how easy Esau could take that away, Section 8, EBT, just like that. Um, they didn't want a man in the house, so they would come in, look in the closet, see if there's boots, look at the pictures. There's a man in the house, but at the same time, government subsidies were being used for farmers. They didn't say they had to keep the men out the house and the farmers. You know what I'm saying? So it was an attack on us, and it's still an attack on us. We just got to know better and do better. Okay, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, which reads, "And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and ab ab abomination of the Lord." Kind of sloppy for that word. Um, so fathers, don't provoke your children to wrath. You know what I mean? You can't be, don't be a lion in your house. Okay, you want to, you got to have stern. You got to be stern. You know what I mean? Because children will run all over you if they see weakness. But having the child always in fight or flight mode is not the way to go. You know what I'm saying? You want to have the child to admire Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. You know what I'm saying? Because you are the mouthpiece, in your family to let them know who they are and what they should be doing. Do you know what I'm saying? Let's go to Colossians 3 and 2. Colossians chapter 3, verse Slakia, 21. Fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. And it's always you can see what happens when a child's always yelled at. It doesn't matter what they do. You know what I mean? They wake up in the morning, the father's yelling at them, cussing them out, and he just becomes like, you know, shrinking slowly into the corner. You know what I mean? You should want your child to be better than you. Do you know what I'm saying? You should want that for your child. There's the part in the Five Heartbeats where he says, "You ain't gonna be ish, cause I ain't gonna be ish." That's what he said to his son. You ain't gonna be nothing because I ain't gonna be nothing. Fill in the blanks. But that type of like dominance you need, you know what I mean? Um, it's only gonna cause more generational curses down the line. You know what I mean? Build up your child, build up your son, build up your daughters. You know what I mean? Don't have them traumatized by the time they reach, kindergarten. By the time they get to school, they don't want to do nothing, be nothing because the father was overly aggressive. You know what I'm saying? What does it say? Fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. You don't want your child to be discouraged. You want your child to be uh, um, you know, put him on your shoulders so he can rise up and lead his family and lead his community into righteousness. Okay. Um, People that play football, they're like, I want my child to be in the NFL. I want my child to be better than anybody that ever put on a football uniform. Why not have your child be more proficient in the scriptures and follow the law, statutes, commandments than you were? You know, that's righteousness. That's moving in the right direction. Okay. Doesn't always have to be football and basketball and sports and all this other stuff. That's all good and dandy. You know what I mean? Of course, a lot of those sports are played on the Sabbath, but as far as the training and um, the muscle movement and the hand-eye coordination, that's all good. You know what I mean? But you should definitely want your child to be a head and shoulders above you, as far as the scriptures goes. You know what I mean? And that's a good thing. It's not like bad. It's not bad. That's moving in the right direction. So then he's gonna raise his child like that. You know what I'm saying? Walking, talking books of Eli. Okay. The mother's role. We could read that in, Proverbs 31. You know what I mean? What does she do? Proverbs 31. And a lot of people, a lot of women, I'm a Proverbs 31 woman. Well, let's go with I mean, I that's you guys, your husband, is that the case, right? Proverbs 31, verse 10. Who can find a virtuous woman? Her price is far above rubies. Okay, the heart of her husband doeth safely trust in her, that she may have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. Like, well, I'm a Proverbs 31 woman. Husband be like, yeah, that sound good. You know what I mean? But he might not want to say anything because she might just go off there. What do you mean I'm not? Da, da, da." That's all extra. Don't be just all over the place in your house, women. The same thing applies to men. Just being overly aggressive, overly loud. You know what I'm saying? But what does it say about the what does she do? Verse 15, she rises also while it is yet night and giveth meat to her household and a portion to her maidens. She considereth a field and buyeth it. With the fruit of her hand she planteth a vineyard. She girdeth up her loins in strength and strengthened her arms. Like, yeah, she's building up her house. She's not tearing it down. You know what I'm saying? And building up her family in a way that Yahweh Shemel Shai will be pleased. Let's get Second Timothy's. All right. Second Timothy's. So these are examples of how we should be treating, how we should be acting, treating our family, raising our children. Okay. Let's get Second Timothy chapter 1 and verse 5. When I call to remembrance the unforeign faith that is in thee, which thou first in thy grandmother Lois and her mother Eunice, and I am persuaded that in thee also. So, you know, it goes down the line. You know what I'm saying? You got to learn from the mother and the grandmother. Now, if your mother was a little off, your grandmother's a little off, it's time to break those generational curses. Take the best of what they give you and the negative things leaves to the side because we were all taught for the most part um how to go off, you know what I mean? Willie Lynch type things, to look at Elon Musk like he is so much better than somebody, or just leave out Esau, Diddy, you know what I mean? He has so much money, but he's kicking Cassie in the face. You know what I'm saying? That kid, the money girl, you know what I mean? Look at his job that he has, girl. But if he's not following the law, statutes, commandments, he's not a high value man. Okay. Women are foundational in spiritual training, because they're dealing with the children possibly a lot more than the man, in the normal circumstances. Okay. Now, discipline is love. Discipline, overly discipline is being a lion in your house, not a good thing. But you gotta discipline your children. All right. Let's go to Proverbs 13. Because you see, when Esau doesn't discipline a child. A child be cussing them out in in a grocery store or having tantrums, and they grow up to, you know, uh, take out the entire school. You know what I mean? Oh, somebody embarrassed me at school. Show up the next day, everybody's running. Do you know what I'm saying? You got to have discipline for your child. Uh, Proverbs 13 and 24. He that spareth his rod hateth his son, and he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. You know what I mean? So if you spare the rod, you're really not giving love to your sons. Discipline is love. You know that he's going to grow up and remember that, I'm not supposed to do that. I remember that time I got in trouble for that. Let me, you know, let me revisit what I'm about to do. You know what I mean? Let me get Proverbs 22 and 6. This book of Proverbs, chapter 22 and verse 6. Train up a child in a way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Okay, so train your child. They don't know any better. You actually have a conversation with, you might, Slocky, you might been, I know the name of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. I know this, I know that. You know it so much that you think everybody else knows it. But your child comes into this world, you have to teach them. Yeah, teach them what to do, what not to do. Don't touch that. It's hot. You're gonna burn your hand. You know what I mean? Give your children uh the knowledge that you have that you didn't have at that age, but increment levels, they might not understand it at a certain age. Okay? That's why you should use wisdom and when it comes to raising your child and discretion on what they will know and grasp and what they might not know. Okay. Let's see. Let's get Ecclesiasticus chapter 30. All right. Ecclesiasticus chapter 30. We'll start verse 1. He that loveth his son causes him up to feel the rod, that he may have joy of him in the end. So if you love your son, discipline your child. Don't have him out there running wild. Verse 2, he chasteneth his son, shall have joy in him. He and it's like it, and shall rejoice in him among his acquaintance. Verse 3, he that teacheth his son grieveth the enemy. And that's another thing. You teach your child, they're upset about that. They want you out the house, black man. They want you abandoning your child. Don't give them what they want. You know what I mean? Fight them. We fighting white supremacy over here, man. You know what I'm saying? We're in Babylon. We are in Babylon fighting the the most destructive military. Even though the $38 trillion in debt, it doesn't matter because they print the money. So financially, they do whatever they want. They got missiles and bombs and drones and tomahawks and all this other stuff, man. You got to do your job. You got to play your part. You got to work at this, man. You know what I'm saying? Grieve your enemy, man. Teach your child. Raise them up right. Let them know that you follow the law, statutes, commandments. God will listen to you. He will hear your prayers, and He will destroy this people. He will destroy people for you. Okay, He will have angels encamp around you, so you are protected. You know what I'm saying? And then if you do the opposite, then you're gonna get the opposite. You're not gonna get no protection. You're gonna have a tough time in life. You know what I mean? Job was perfect. He still had to go through some things. You know what I'm saying? So understand this, you're gonna still have to go through things in life, but the more you follow the law, statutes, commandments, the closer you get to the Most High God, your enemies are gonna be grieved. People are gonna, you know, at some point in time, you know, if it be the Most High's will, He's gonna say, "Well done." You get a well done from Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, from God. Okay. Let me read that again. He that teacheth his son grieveth the enemy, and before his friends he shall rejoice at him. You know what I mean? So keep that in mind. Discipline is an abuse. You know what I mean? There's a line between discipline and abuse. Abuse is just like, you know, you just want to hurt something. You know what I'm saying? Even if the child came from you, you just want to hurt something. That's something deep inside. You gotta get ahead of that, man. You gotta look yourself in the mirror. You know what I mean? If you're a abusive person and people have labeled you an abusive person, then it's possibility you are abusive. I don't think a lot of people that are abusive necessarily call themselves that. Like, no, I'm not abusive. I just, every now and then I have a few beers and all this other stuff, man. Listen, examine yourself, okay? Because you going to war with your family and dismantling your family and not building up your family is going to fall back on you. Okay. Correction, structure, boundaries. Okay. And correction prevents destruction. Let's get that. Proverbs 19. Proverbs, Slakia, chapter 19 and verse 18. Chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crying. Okay. So giving him that correction, giving him that spanking, right? If you will, and prevent destruction. A lot of these children nowadays, they didn't get that, you got helicopter parents that want to be their child's friend. You know what I'm saying? Hey, what are we doing this weekend, Johnny? You know what I'm saying? Come on, Ray. Where are we going this weekend? They hanging out with their child and never correcting them. And there's nothing wrong about, being friendly with your child, you know what I'm saying? But to be friends is never any type of correction. There's never, no. They never hear no. So by the time your child hears no, they already wilding out, you know? They sitting there cussing in school, skipping class, smoking weed, hanging out with them dudes on the other side of town. And then you wonder what happened, By the time they 15, 16 years old, you don't got no control over them. You know what I mean? They're giving the neighborhood hell. He probably carries weapons and, he's going the wrong way. Listen to the worst type of music, you know what I mean? Gangster rap and all this other stuff. And he thinks he's a gangster. And then by the time he's 18, he's locked up doing 10, 15, 20 years. And you looking like, what I do, what I go wrong? You didn't correct them when you should have. Okay. But children must obey. Children gotta obey their parents, you know? Let's get Ephesians 6 and 1. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise. It has promise in that commandment. Okay? And then here it is, verse 3, that it may be well with you and thou mayest live long on the earth. These children don't listen to their parents and they end up getting clapped up, And then all you see is the headlines, oh, 13-year-old shot, 14-year-old shot, this, that, and the third, right? And you be like, dang, he's so young. But think about it. The Most High God, he ain't worried about that. The children that disrespected the prophet Elias, and 42 children got tore up by two she bears. So children have a responsibility to listen to their parents, and you got to tell them these scriptures. If they going against you, they going against God. You tell them no, you can't go out, and they go out anyway, and they get car stolen or whatever. Somebody that car doesn't have to be stolen. Get in a car accident. You know what I mean? Something bad happens that night. You're going against your parents. Bad things are going to happen. Okay. And if you want long life, listen to your parents. All right. Obedience brings protection. Let's get Proverbs 1 and 8. Couple more scriptures, y'all. Proverbs 1 and 8. My son, hear the instruction of thy father and forsake not the law of thy mother. So children have responsibility too. It's not just always on the parents. The children have to listen. If they don't, parents discipline them. But if you got an unruly child that just won't listen, everything you doing, does exact opposite. Don't give up on the child. You know what I'm saying? Bring them to the elders. That's why, we have camps, you know what I mean? And congregations, you know what I mean? The individualites, it's difficult to maneuver in that sense because you're just by yourself, you know what I mean? But we understand that Satan will try to get at your children. It's just what it is to get at you, okay? But, it's different. Sometimes it's different when other people talk to them rather than their parents, okay? You bring somebody else in. And it could be an uncle, could be, like your brother, a cousin or somebody that the child respects. Okay. But in the signs of the last days, This is where we're at. Let's get Isaiah 3. And we're definitely in the last days. Children aren't, the sweet, wholesome kids that they are all the time. Okay, because it's the TV, the music, all that um filters into where we are in society. Okay. Isaiah chapter 3, verse 4, and I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them. Verse 5, and the people shall be oppressed, every one by another, and every one by his neighbor. The child shall behave himself proudly against the ancient, and the base against the honorable. Okay. So, in order for these children to want to do better, to be better, they gotta do better too. You know what I mean? And we live in the last days, can't fall into the traps that America has set up. You know what I mean? America has definitely set up. Um, so, you know, children, in order to make it into the kingdom, they gotta tighten up, gotta read the scriptures. So that's why it's a good time to turn off the TV, take out your Bible, and read. Okay. We want righteous households. Okay, let's get that in Isaiah 54. A righteous household is exact. You don't want to go back and forth, yelling and cussing and all this other stuff. That energy feeds, demonic entities. You know what I'm saying? And that's real. Isaiah 54 and verse 13. And all thy children shall be taught of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of thy children. You know what I'm saying? So a promise for a righteous household, following the law, statutes, commandments will give you peace. Going off. If you're going off, your child's going to go off. It's very important, to keep fasting, light your incense, read your scriptures, okay, and teach your child to do so, because you're going to have anxiety, depression, all types of things that could jump on you in this kingdom. So before that happens, before you start going, to the point where the police have to be called and, child services are coming in, follow the age-old ways of how to get yourself right. And in getting yourself right, most high willing, your children will follow suit. Okay. Because we're in the last days. You know what I mean? Um, let's go to Malachi 4 and 6. These cycles that we're in, we gotta stop. We can't be on a hamster wheel. Stay on this hamster wheel, we're gonna get the same thing we always got. We want righteousness, righteous households. Okay. Malachi chapter 4, verse 6. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. Okay. At the end time restoration, reconnecting families, connecting the generational damage that has occurred through centuries of slavery. You know, this isn't an easy task. It's not for the you know the weak of heart to just throw your hands up and give up. It's not easy, you know, but it's worth it. Okay. Let's see. With that, you know, let me get one more. Okay. And the children in the kingdom. Let's get Matthew. One more. Matthew 18 verse 3. We see how children are treated in society. You know what I mean? The Most High has Son come and show us, the importance of children. Okay, the way they are, you know what I mean? And how we should learn from them. Okay. You can learn from your child. That's important. If you can learn from anybody. You know what I'm saying? You could talk to somebody in the streets, that you think, they ain't got a pot to piss in and the window throw it out, Salakia, and learn a lot from them. You know what I mean? You can learn from somebody who dropped out of fifth grade. You can learn from somebody who's mute and can't even speak. Like you can learn from people. You know what I mean? You can learn from everybody. You know, you can definitely learn from your children. Matthew chapter 18 and verse 3, and said, Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter in the kingdom of heaven. So whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So learn humility, you know, be open, keep your you know, be aware that your children are watching you. Okay, they're watching you. So just like that 80s commercial, where do you learn to use drugs? I learned from watching you. Your children are watching you. It's not necessarily what you say, it's how you move and how you act. All right. So save the children. Okay. Esau's aiming to destroy them. Save the children. Okay. Um, and that's the class. Hopefully it was edifying. Let's get a few scriptures. Go to Numbers. Just like after I'm gonna say the anointing prayer. I'm gonna blow up the trumpet. Numbers chapter 10, verse 10. And the day of your gladness and in your solemn feast days, in the beginning of your months, shall you blow with the trumpets over your burnt offerings and over your sacrifices of your peace offerings, that they may be to you for a memorial before your God. I am the Lord your God. So blowing up the trumpet in the new moon. This is the new moon, 12th month, getting closer and closer to the new year, getting closer and closer to Passover. All right, we're getting into that season. And look at us going into this Passover after all this being exposed on Esau. All right, this is the time for us to build ourselves back up because we about to take the kingdom. All right, point blank, period. Yeah, I said it. All right. Psalm chapter 81 and verse 3, blow up the trumpet in the new moon, in the time appointed of our solemn feast day. For this was a statute for Israel and a law of the God of Jacob. All right. So it's a law. We're gonna blow that trumpet. Know what I'm talking about? All praise and honor to Yahweh Shem Mashiach Yahushai. All right, let's get one more. Got classics, classics, classics. Isaiah 66 and verse 22, for as the new heaven and the new earth which I will make shall remain before me, saith the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain. So it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord. Kwom Yashala. All right. So if you have, let's get some olive oil. We are going to anoint our head with oil and say the anointing prayer. Okay, so if you can get your olive oil, that would be great. I'll give you a couple minutes. Well, not a couple minutes, but give you some time to do that. All right. Okay. All right. So this is the anointing prayer. Meditate. Think about what you would like the Most High to do for you this month. Think about all the amazing things He's done. You know what I mean? That you're thankful for and what you look forward to in the future. All right. Yabaraki Yahweh, Ashamarkar, Yahweh, Pan Yahweh, Anyakar, Ahanyakar, Yasha'a Yahweh, Pan Yahweh, Anyakar, Shemnakar, Shalom, Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shai, Babakashar, Shammai, Nawa, Aitha, Shalak, Micah Allah, Elohim, La, Shema'il, Barak, Rapar, Izar, Magun, Kazak, Ataziah, Bawa, Yasha Allah, Yasha Allah, Yasha Allah, Kol, Akim, Kol, Akwathium, Kol, Bunyam, Yasha Allah, Ba'ashem, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shai, Dawada, Damyad, Awalam, Amen. Khan, all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bashim, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shai. Save the children. Okay, don't let TV raise your children. Don't let society raise your children. Raise them up in the law, statutes, commandments of the Bible. You have pleasure in your children. You know what I mean? You let them get raised by TV. They gonna, you know what I mean? In the streets, they gonna be hell raisers out here. You know what I mean? You give them no discipline like Esau. They're gonna be wilding out every time they get upset. You know, I'll be back. You know what I mean? Just not being able to control their anger. I'm gonna come back and everybody's gonna pay. You know what I mean? You gotta discipline your child early. Don't have them be raised by these daggone demons out here, man. You know what I mean? Save the children, you know, and definitely watch your child around these Edomites, you know, because as you can see, it's prevalent. None of this stuff is new. From the Catholic Church to the politicians to the people in corporate offices and in jets and yachts. You know what I mean? They all perverts, man. You know what I'm saying? So protect your children, pray over them, uh, you know, every night, every morning, you know what I'm saying? And may the Most High continue to protect you, your family, raise you up and your family in wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of these scriptures. And may all good things come to you. May the Most High send his son back and destroy these wicked people. And Most High One, I'll be seeing y'all in the chariots. Kwom Yashala, we got next. Shalom.